In this tutorial, we are going to be learning how to make this render right here. We're also going to be animating it, so it's a lot of fun, having fun with lighting, some really cool things happening. So let's go ahead and delete this whole scene. I'm going to go ahead and get a plane in the scene and go over here to Geometry Nodes. So now that we're in the Geometry Nodes workspace, I'm going to go ahead and kill that window and get a new tree, and I'm going to go ahead and delete that node there. Go to Mesh Primitives and get in an icosphere. Plug that into geometry, and I'm going to give myself one subdivision. Now we need to kind of break this up a little bit. So we're going to get a separate geometry and get a random selection, which is an actually random value, not random selection. To kind of randomly pick what faces we're going to delete, we're going to go here from point to face. We're going to go from float to Boolean, which just gives us one value here, and one seed has nothing to do with like the Boolean modifier, that kind of thing. It's just a similar name, and we'll plug the value into the selection, and of course it's going to give a random selection here. But now what we can do is kind of play with these gaps with this inverted, because the inverted is that it's quite literally the inverted selection that it randomly picked. So we're going to go ahead, Shift-A, and search and get a join geometry, plug the inverted there, and then we're going to get a subdivide mesh. So shift to search subdivide mesh, put it right there. You can't visually see anything yet, but here you can. So you can actually see it happening just like that. I'm going to give my viewport here level of 1. Now that we have that, we're going to go ahead and get in a triangulate. So you might say it looks triangulated now, but if we go here, it's kind of triangulated, but we want to kind of goof with a little bit. So we're going to get a real triangulate node, see what this little fun thing it does now. So that's what we want, because we're going to be adding a dual mesh node. Dual mesh really likes those triangle faces, depending on the style you're going for. Now we're going to plop that there, and it's going to give us this craziness, and we can go ahead and play with this probability to tell it small ones, big ones, or have a healthy mix of the two. And then now we're here, we can really have some fun. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe goof with the random seed as well till we get a selection that we like. And of course, being that this is node-based and procedural, you can always change this later. So let's go here to the modifiers, and we're going to go ahead and add a wireframe modifier, bring that thickness up, and also click boundary. And then we're going to get a subdivision surface modifier to smooth that out. And you can get your levels in your viewport like this. I'm going to say bring my viewport and my render down to 2. That seems like it's going to be enough. And then the last thing we're going to do here is get in a simple deform. I'm going to go on the Z-axis and just kind of stretch it a little bit, and gives it this really cool circular look. Now go back up here and click on the Geometry Nodes modifier, and we're going to go add one more node here, which is a translate, I believe it's called. Yeah, transform, not translate. And then what we're going to do is how we're going to animate it. So it's really cool when you animate it. You get this really weird looking thing, and it's very alien looking. I'm going to go ahead and get a smooth node. So set shade smooth. That's the way it works here in Geometry Nodes. And then what I'm going to do now is get another one. So I'm going to go and highlight everything here. I'm hit Shift D. I'm going to get a join geometry node. Put that, drag that down and plug that here. And then right here on the scale, I'm going to go ahead and click and drag and then scale it out a little bit. And then goof with rotation. So now we have 2 of these. So we'll animate this one here, and we'll animate this one here. And you get this really, really cool look. Of course, you can click and drag and maybe bring a little bit closer, but that's it. That's our look, that's our animation, and it looks awesome. And then we can go ahead, of course, get an icosphere right here. And then I'm going to go ahead and subdivide him, shade smooth, put it there. And we have the Geometry Nodes portion of this scene completed. So it's really cool, and it was relatively easy too. So now we're going to make this look really cool. An alien environment, looking with some displacement. So let's go ahead and get a plane. I'm going to hit S5, Control A, apply that scale. Then I'm going to hit Tab, hit U, and click Unwrap. And that's the only bit of unwrapping we're going to need to do. Now, what we need to do is go to ambientcg.com right here. Ambientcg.com used to be called C0 Textures. And we're gonna go ahead and type in rock and go and just pick whatever rock material you want. If I'm remembering correctly, I think I picked this rock material here. But you can pick any of them. All of these are totally free. Open source, not open source. I think they're royalty free if I'm not mistaken. CC0. So go ahead and you'll pick one, and once you click a rock, you'll go ahead and get your 4K. You can get 8K if you want. Of course, it'll make it more high quality, but it's unnoticeable if you use 4K right here. And I'll show you how to import that into Blender next. So now we have this right here. I'm going to hit Tab, I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to go ahead and give my number of cuts at 100. So that's going to give us some pretty good baseline shading. Now let's go ahead and get our render settings set up here first. So I'm going to go from Eevee to Cycles. I'm going to go my devices, go to my GPU. On my viewport render samples, I'm going to go 32. And then here on the actual render, I'm going to go 300 for now. We may need to up that later. Now that we have that, I'm going to go here to my light pass. And we're just going to go ahead and click and drag and make everything one turn off, reflective and reflective clock, reflective and refractive caustics, and we're done. That's really just going to make your render super, super fast. All right, let's go to shading and implement this whole thing here. So I'm going to click New. I'm going to bring this up a little bit. Now, if you have the Node Wrangler add-on enabled, it comes with Blender by default. We're going to go ahead and hit Ctrl-T right on this principled, and we hit G to move this up. Now we have an image texture mapping node and a texture coordinate with a UV. Very important UV connected. I'm going to go here to open, and I save my file here as rocks. So let's go ahead and get that color. So now we have our color implemented here. And then I'm just going to bring this up. I'm going to hit Shift-D, plug this in. I forget the shortcut to duplicate it. How it connected, you can let me know in the comments. And then now I'm going to click this number 2, and I'm going to go here to non-color, because now we're going to do our roughness. So roughness is going to get plugged straight into the roughness here. So now we're going to have a little bit of roughness fun, and we need displacement, which only happens in cycles. So let's just go ahead and get a displacement node. I'm going to put it down here and then plug the displacement into the displacement. And of course, I'm going to hit G, move that down. I'm going to duplicate this, which is going to be our displacement node. So bring that down like this. I'm going to click the number 2 button. I just noticed my roughness was turned back to sRGB. Not sure how, but make sure that says non-color plugged into the roughness. And then this is going to be, we're going to hit this little button here. Go to our displacement, of course. Go here to non-color. And then we're going to plug this color into the mid-level. So you can see some stuff happening here, and that's just going to be happening on the bump. So what we need to do is first go here to cycles, and then I'm hit this drop down, do scene world scene lights, so we can get some kind of default lighting happening in our scene. Now click on this material button here, scroll to the bottom, go to settings, and then right here on displacements is bump only to displacement and bump, and some magic will happen. Let's go ahead and get a subdivision surface modifier and shade smooth here. So now we have this. Of course, for me, there's 2 things wrong with it. So what I'm going to do is first off, right here on the scale on the mapping, I'm going to click and drag and click 2. That's basically going to tile this material by 2. So notice that there is now 4 duplicates of this one. So if we just go to 1, no duplicates, and then click and drag 2. But if you don't want that, you can actually do how much duplication you want. But since we're rendering it this direction, it's not going to be super obvious. So I'm just going to go to 2. Now, if we go here to the render, it's way too powerful. So I'm going to bring my scale down to be something like 0.39. So that's where my displacement is at 0.39. And we're done with our rock ground material. It looks pretty good. It's not perfect, but because of the lighting, it'll be just fine. All right, so now let's go ahead and deal with our lighting. So we have this whole scene here. I'm going to hit this drop down, click Scene World Scene Light so we can kind of look at the lighting. So first off, in the world, bring this all the way down. And then let's go ahead, Shift A and get a spotlight. We're going to bring it here. I'm going to hit S to kind of scale it down. Bring it here. Bring it like there. All right. And we're going to need a pretty high strength of like maybe 30,000 for the area light. And then let's go here to cycles and bring our radius really soft. And then bring our spot size down. So now we have the spot size at 17, my radius at 1.16. Of course, depending on what you're doing, it may need to be different. And then I'm going to hit G and kind of move it back. So now we have this line. This is how it's going to look in EV, and this is how it's going to look in cycles. Drastically better in cycles, but you do what works for you. So now I'm going to go ahead and put my camera right about here. Shift A, get a camera, and then I'm going to hit Ctrl-Alt-0 snap to view. And let's see how that looks. So I'm going to hit G, middle, click, move back, and then I'm going to hit this whole situation, move it closer to the ground. And then I do want to do one thing back in geometry nodes to make this look better. So notice how we have these two things, and this one kind of goes farther out. I want it to look a little more aggressive. So I'm going to click and drag and bring it out some more. When it's too close, it doesn't look quite as aggressive, and I want it to look really cool. So there we go. Now keep in mind, when you're just in flat shaded mode, it's okay if this is intersecting with that, because when we go to the render, that whole ground plane is going to be a little bit different. So here in geometry nodes, let's go ahead and actually animate this whole situation. So I'm going to bring my mouse over here. So there's this little plus icon, drag it up. We're going to go to timeline, and in your preferences, so edit preferences, make sure in the animation tab, your default interpolation is set to linear. So we're going to go ahead and animate this guy right here, which I'm going to honestly bring him out a little bit too. Okay, so I'm going to go hover into the timeline, go back to frame 0, and I'd say 250 is probably fine on the frames, and then we're trying to animate it on the Y-axis. So right-click Insert Keyframe, go to the very end, and type in 360, and then right-click Insert Keyframe. And now we're going to have this animation doing what it wants to do. And then right over here, we can probably animate it like this if we want. But let's just go ahead and animate it at -360. So right-click Insert Keyframe, go to the very end, -360 Insert Keyframe. And now we have this little alien-looking thing gooping around. And if we look at it here in cycles, so far we have a very basic-looking scene, but it's cool. It's cool enough for now. Now let's go ahead and get our background lighting. So I'm going to go ahead and get another plane. RX90 RY90 for me, could be RX90 for you. And then I'm just going to scale this up to fit my scene just like that. Now let's go back to shading. All right, I'm going to hit 0 to go to my camera view. And we're just going to go ahead again here in Material Preview. I'm going to click New, and I'm just going to go ahead and delete this principled shift to search emission. Plug that there. We're going to get a color ramp, and we're going to get a gradient texture. Having this clicked, I'm going to hit Ctrl-T and go to the object coordinate plug color here. And then if you'll notice, the gradient's working right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from linear to B-spline, and then you can just play with your location. And then I'm going to go to the render view here just to make sure that everything's going to work correctly. So let's bring this down to be something like this. Play with that color ramp and then bring that up. See how it kind of has this ugly line right there? It's kind of unreadable, but you can still see it. So we want to play with our color ramp just till that's gone, and then play with your X location. And then if we go here, we can see how it's working now. So now we have that. I'm going to give myself a little bit of color. So I'm going to click on this point spotlight, go slightly to blue, and then I'm going to go and copy that hex code. Then here I'm going to click on that and paste in the hex code there. Cool. Now we need to add a little bit of realism. So there's two things that we can do to make this look a little bit more realistic. So the first one, I'm going to hit G and kind of bring that down and then just kind of bring my camera up a little bit. So the first one is, and zoom in a little bit. The first one's going to be is depth of field. So I'm going to zoom in, bring my f-stop down, and then play with my distance. Tell this thing is in focus. And you can also check focus in just the flat shaded view by going by, clicking this drop down and clicking depth of field. And then you can kind of play with your distance that way too. So I want it to be focused right about there. And then go back to the view and then bring that f-stop down. Most of this thing is in focus and everything else is out of focus. And we're getting something pretty cool. Last thing we're gonna do, something I've done 1,000 times here on the channel, is volume. Volume makes things look cool. So we're gonna go here to the world, click on volume, click this, and we're going to go to principled volume right there. And then just kind of hold down shift and slide this over till you like the amount of volume in the scene. And this is going to go miles to adding some realism into this scene. Last thing we're going to do is create a material for this. I initially wasn't even going to add a material because the flat shade looked really cool, but I wanted to add some texture. So that's what we're going to do. So what we're going to do is click on this object, go to the button here and click the plus icon. Click New. Now let's go over here to Geometry Nodes and get Set Material. Put that there and get that new material, which is 003 for me, whatever that new material is called. Select that. Now we're going to go to Shading, and we're going to go to the Material Preview, and let's go ahead and just go Bump Node Color Ramp. Noise Texture Control T to get that object coordinate like factor here. And then let's go ahead and bring that detail to 12, bring that roughness up. And then kind of do this little number here, playing with that color ramp. And then also bring up the scale of this color ramp. And then we're just going to kind of just play with it. We want to add these kind of weird bumps there, something like that. And then on this material, we're going to hit this drop down, click that too. So we have that same material on both. And the reason we have that is just simply to mess with lighting. So there's some lighting mess happening. If I just go ahead and put that, bring that down, you can kind of see now there is some bumping happening. And now we have the scene. I'm going to go ahead and hit the render button to see how this looks right now. All right, so this is how our scene is looking at the time. It looks like it took 15 seconds to render it at 300 samples for me. So pretty good timing. What I'm going to do is go back to shading, and I'm going to go to cycles. And I'm just going to go ahead and bring the brightness of my background up a little bit to match the brightness that's going on my object. So now we can see that that's looking really, really nice. All right, it's pretty much it. And we do have it animating here. So what I'm going to show you is your render settings and we're going to be finished. So right here, click on this little printer icon, go here and select where you want to save your file. I highly recommend. This is going to be a cycles animation that's going to take a little bit to render. So I'd say render this overnight. So we're going to do a PNG sequence. If you don't want to do a PNG sequence, which right now you'd be done if you wanted to, if you don't want to do MPG sequence, you just want Blender to render out a video for you, go to FFmpeg video on encoding, go to MP4 medium quality to perceptually lossless render, and render animation, and you'll have an animation like this one. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial.